Welcome to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm Rebecca, your host, and together we'll explore the spirit of beauty, how beauty invites new possibilities, enlivens us to inhabit our innate creativity, and connects us more deeply with ourselves and with each other. We'll have conversations and share reflections that invite you into a frequency of gentleness, truth, and mystery. I'm so glad you're here. If you find the Liberating Beauty Podcast meaningful, please consider supporting our work. To donate, follow the link in the show notes to the Together in Beauty website, home to this podcast, along with other offerings to accompany you on your journey of spiritual becoming. Please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast wherever you listen. And as always, thank you for your support and for being here with us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm really glad to have you here with me this week. I can't even tell you. Last week, I started a periodic series called Outside the Matrix. And if you haven't listened to it yet, I welcome you to hear that first as a little bit of context for today's episode. The crux of it was I was talking about what it feels like each time we see the story of our lives, see the expectations we've placed on ourselves or that have been placed on it, and say, you know what, I think a different path forward is possible. And what would that look like? And what would that feel like if I said yes to this uncharted course? And in last week's episode, I talked about, I'm going to bring some real life examples of these places in my own life where I'm navigating these thresholds of new possibility, of stepping outside of the story that I imagined for my life or that I thought was possible. And I hadn't intended to do this, bring examples back to back. I mentioned it's a periodic series, but this particular topic is so timely, and I foreshadowed it a little bit. And now that I'm in it even more, I wanted to share with you from the inside of the experience. So I talked about how my family has a big international move planned. And at the time I recorded the last episode Outside the Matrix, it was about 2.5 weeks before the move. Now we're down to a week. And the felt sense of that experience and being on that verge of stepping outside of the matrix has compounded exponentially. Like it's hard to explain, but I'll try. I mean, I can physically feel the tension of something about to happen. And I felt it was important and generative to share with you from this place of tension, because it's easy sometimes to romanticize the idea of breaking free and what that would feel like. There's a sense of jubilation and creative energy that is unleashed, which is real. Another reality is that the courage to energize the transition is immense. And I can feel it in my arms, like a tension. I can feel it in the way thoughts don't stay stuck in my mind for very long. I'm having a hard time staying grounded and present in the way that I've come accustomed to. I appreciate in myself. I can focus, I can stay engaged, and things aren't sticking. It's like this complete liminal space of, nope, you are not exactly in the place where you came from, and you are definitely not yet where you're going. You're just there. You're just in this middle. And I think it's important that we socialize this with each other, because it's easy to start second guessing ourselves. Like, if I feel this uncomfortable, this must be a signal that something's wrong. Maybe I made the wrong decision. Maybe I moved in haste. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. What was I thinking? And I want to propose a different possibility that's perhaps discomfort could be a signal that something is right. Of course, not all the time. I'm not masochistic. Sometimes if something hurts, you stop. But in a situation where an insight or an intuition, it's been received, there's a sense of keep going in this direction. Even if you don't understand all of it, keep going. When discomfort inevitably, naturally arises, what feels true to me right now is that could be a signal that we are mustering up the courage and capacity that it takes to try something new. And I want to just be honest with you about how completely uncomfortable I feel. In the sense, I'm sharing this is almost like a little time capsule to remember. I hope, a month from now, 2 months from now, family's settled and, we're enjoying some of the things that we hoped for in this move. And who even knows what that will end up being. But it's so endearing to look back even a few months and say, oh, remember when this felt so impossible and you did it? I think we all must do that for each other, to say, these things that in retrospect, we can almost forget how hard they were, how uncomfortable, how painful they were worth it. So often when I do that, it's like, it's almost like it's like a tick box in my mind. Like, oh yes, that was uncomfortable, but we did it. But we don't remember just how it felt. It's almost like when I'm thinking when my kids, literally, I'm actively delivering them into the world, and how you're being, torn apart in the process of giving birth in life. And it's hard for me to remember the feeling of what that was like. And I can't think of anything scarier I've ever done. Anything that felt like this threshold and you have no idea when they're going to arrive in the world. And yet there they are. I wonder, so this time with this threshold, with this opportunity to step outside what I thought was possible, I want to remember how it felt. I want to remember that this discomfort is generative, that it is in service. It is also an opportunity for reaching to the most gentle corners of our beingness. I'm telling myself this is not a time to try to analyze my relationships with other people or myself. This is not the time for that. This is the time for gentleness. This is the time for ease. This is the time for nourishment as much as possible and care, because to be able to make these kind of leaps are monumental. They require significant energy to come into being and to come into form. So I'm sharing this with you in part because I imagine in your own lives, whether you're making moves, thinking about children, thinking about jobs, thinking about how you navigate relationships with aging parents, how you navigate your place in a global world, pick a thing. As you move in the direction of new possibilities, new challenges, new openings, it's inevitable that a lot of, as my kids say, big feelings are going to come up. And I am encouraging all of us to say, before we label that discomfort as proof that something is wrong, can we take a pause and say, perhaps this discomfort is a signal of something that is so right, that it is the willingness to stick with a path that is uncharted, and that evokes a lot of sensation. Stay with it anyway. I don't know that I've ever connected with you from a place that feels so raw, so unclear, but also so true. So I think I'm going to end it here for this week, because most of all, I wanted to give you that sense, the felt sense of what is it like to move through any kind of transition, to step outside of the matrix for even a moment, and to recognize that discomfort as something that could be generative, and to encourage you, as you encourage me, to keep going. Until next time, be well. Thank you for listening to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. To learn more about the podcast, my work, and how I can support you on your journey of spiritual becoming, head over to the Together in Beauty website or email me at rebecca@together-in-beauty.com. It's an honor to accompany you on the journey. A huge thank you to our multi-talented producer and co-creative director, Mapumba Chilambo. To learn more about Mapumba's work as a producer, sound engineer, and musician, check out the show notes for a link to his website at mapumbamusic.com. And as always, many thanks to you, our listeners. None of this would be possible without the energy, encouragement, and vitality that you reflect back to us each week. Until next time, may you walk in beauty.